Beware the Batman, episode 11, titled Instincts. This episode was pretty action based to me. It obviously had its story elements with, Bruce basically, continuing his training with Tatsu. And in this episode, trying to teach her, go with your instincts. That way you don't have to, think and assess every situation like a detective and, waste your time. Just, you know, have a feel for the environment and, train your body to know when there's trouble. And the scene when they're at the restaurant, I really enjoyed that. I thought it was really funny. It's like he has like a bat radar going off, and he could see the guy was cheating on his wife, which I thought was kind of crazy. It's like you'd have to have like supervision to see that. But he sees the guy stealing from the register, and then he sees a pickpocket all the way down on the street, stealing from a woman. And it was cool, when Tatsu says, like, when do you turn it off? And he says, I don't. And I thought he would stop there, but then he says, I can't. And it makes it seem as though he kind of wish he could sometimes, rather than seeing every single event, you know, go off. Even when it's not something huge and something as minor as, a guy cheating on his wife, or, I guess it's not really minor to say someone's, stealing money. But, it seems like he kind of wishes he could at least tone it down, if not, completely turn it off at times, so he could just relax and actually enjoy life, rather than just, like looking as Bruce Wayne, but always being Batman, in his mind and watching criminals. But I enjoyed this episode. Tatsu once again, like I said, still getting her lessons. And one of my favorite parts is when they both go to rescue the fashion designer guy, who they really went all out on to make him seem gay. But when they go to save him, and Batman says, use your instincts, which I thought was really dangerous. It's like I don't think his life is worth her the risk of her training. But she sees the contraption like going in, and she tries to stop it, and so she throws the shuriken, and they just like fly all over the room. It was really funny, and like she like ducks down and stuff, and like I didn't really look at him, but I'm pretty sure he just stood completely still, even though they're like shuriken ricocheting off the walls and stuff. And then she stands up and she's like, sorry, and he's like, it's okay, it's a good effort, because he, recognized the fact that she did see the solution to the problem. It's just that the shuriken weren't good enough. And then he throws out like exploding gel orbs, and everything's fine. But the episode I thought was fairly well done, especially because of the villains they have in this episode, who are Professor Pig and Toad. And the reason I think it's done so well because of them is actually because I didn't like them at all in the very first episode, but in this one I actually like them a lot more. And I don't know, it might be just the dialogue itself. They seem better just all around, and maybe it's because they weren't just like capturing people and then like keeping them prisoner. They were kind of setting people up in traps, and then they do actually have a pretty serious fight, because in the first episode there was really only the chase scene, and then there was like a really small fight scene between Batman and Professor Pig, I believe, when they were like in a really enclosed space. But in this episode, they have a pretty big fight, and then they have another fight at the end of the episode. And in their first fight, I thought it was really cool when Batman was fighting Professor Pig. It kind of reminded me of the Arkham games, when you can like button mash and beat up like the really big guys. It seemed like he was doing that for a little bit, and so they're fighting like crazy, and then he like suplexes him, which I thought was insane, but it was really cool. And then Toad hits him with like a sonic boom, and then they did one of the things I always hate when I see in TV shows, which is where the villains can completely kill the good guy, but then they stop for a really dumb reason, like the cop showing up, like as if he couldn't just like shoot an air blast in 1 second and then they left. It just seemed like there's no way in the world him shooting out the air would have taken that much time, which he has to release anyway, so he does it slowly. So it's like he could have just like, I always like it better when they just do it anyway, and then you just write it in where they didn't actually kill him, he's just injured. Like, it just, stuff like that always seems to make more sense than, oh, the cops, we just heard the sirens, so let's stop and then leave. But that's how that episode played out. But they go through, and then they have the nursery rhyme, "Bye Bye Black Sheep," which I never would have figured out because I don't know that nursery rhyme. But I like the first line, when they go through the clues, I never would have got that. But they go through, and then they end up with "One for the Master," and so they think that this runway show is gonna be like blown up and stuff, and they find these bombs, and then they destroy them, and you know, it was a cool comparison between Tattoo and Batman, or Tattoo and Bruce, or Katana and Batman, however you want to look at it. It was a good comparison between the two characters where, she's like up here and she's just like, all right, we solved the problem. One for the dame, one for the master, one for the little boy down the lane. Everything's done. Problem solved. The bad guys got away, but we saved all the people. And then Bruce is on like the opposite side of that where he's like, I can't shake this feeling that something isn't right. Like, there were no victims at the runway party. What did we miss? What is it that we aren't seeing right now? So it was a cool little comparison between the characters to see that Tattoo still, obviously, she still needs training to realize, solving the problem doesn't mean it was a real problem to begin with. I mean, obviously they saved the building from blowing up, but then we realize that there's another bomb on the boat for the after party, and we realize that from the doctor, who is brought back in this episode, and after him being controlled by Cypher, we get to see that he's still affected. Obviously, when Tetsu first goes to him, he's kind of a jerk to her at first. He's just like, what do you want? And then he tries to kiss her like out of nowhere, and it was really weird. And you can obviously see that he's affected by it. And then, it was kind of cool how in the end of the episode, when Tetsu calls him, it's her instinct, like something isn't right with him. He's normally really silly and weird, but he's not like creepy and mean. So her instinct was to check up on him. And so of course he says, like everything's fine. And then, he says, once he hangs up the phone, we see that he's talking to Lady Shiva. And I thought that was really cool because I was wondering how it was going to play out. But, they've already gone straight to it. She knows that he's still under Cypher's control, even though he's not linked anymore. And so Shiva is taking control of him. And we're just gonna have to see how in the world that plays out and how they, find a way to cure him. But I thought it was a great ending to the episode because, obviously with him being in the episode, it was to show, the advancement of him still being under the control of Cypher, or at least under some form of control, even though he's not officially linked to Cypher anymore. So it was cool to get the little hints, and then of course at the very end, it was just flat out. Lady Shiva already knows and has already recruited him into the League of Assassins to, basically build the device for the League. So it'll be cool to see how that works. And that might also, the device that he makes might be a part of how they bring back Ra's al Ghul, because, they might need power for this or for that or whatever, but it could, eventually, like him completing the device could bring back Roz, and then the whole crazy storm of trouble will be coming once he's back. But however that plays out, I'm sure it's going to be very well done, and I'm really excited to see how it affects Tatsu, because obviously she is, she's a lot closer to him than she was in the very first episode when they met, and she does kind of like him now. So they do have a relationship. They aren't like really together. She kissed him, but it seems like they're still trying to figure it out. So however it plays out, it'll have a great effect on her character, and it could eventually lead to the end of her training when she has to, find a way to save him while, not destroying him, something like that. But, this episode itself, very well done. I really enjoyed the action. Like I said, the first fight was really cool. The second fight was really cool, especially, Tatsu coming in to save Batman. I thought that was just really sweet. Like she beat up Toad and Pyg, helped Batman get free, and then they both fought and took down Pyg and Toad. And I just thought it was a really well done fight scene. And the little bits of comedy were really good. The story, the drama itself, Tatsu still going through her training. It's good to see that she is progressing beyond, like initially it was just teamwork. So they have the teamwork aspect down, and then the sacrifice aspect, and now it's her instinct, her if she's alone, her figuring out how do I solve this problem and that problem without having to calculate for hours and hours on end, which we see a lot from Batman in this episode, especially when they have the scene where they're looking for the little boy down the lane, and Tetsu's like, the back computer is calculated like 127 matches, and he's just like, I narrowed it down to three, and he walks away, and she's just like, why do we even have this thing? And I thought that was a really funny part, and it also just it was a part of his instinct. It's as soon as they figure out look for a street with Lane, he's already doing it in his head, and he's done before the computer is done. So it was cool to have that comparison. We get to see Batman, who's like at the top of the bat radar, I guess, and then Tatsu, who's kind of trying to figure things out for herself. But overall, the episode was very well done to me. I'm glad I liked Pig and Toad in this episode, because if you saw my first review, I kind of hated them as villains. I thought they just were kind of stupid. I just didn't like anything about them that much. But in this episode, I actually really enjoyed them. The fighting from them was actually really cool too. And then I guess I just like the dialogue better, and just all around, I felt they were done better in this episode than the first one. So comment below, let me know what you thought of the episode, Pig and Toad's return, Tatsu's actions, and most of all, where things gonna go with the Doctor now that he's been kind of brought into the League of Assassins. Where things gonna go now? Thanks for watching.